I'm Danny, that witch next door, and you're listening to That Witch Podcast. Well, hello, my witchy neighbor. Welcome to another episode of That Witch Podcast, very special episode of That Witch Podcast. If you've never been here before, hey, I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. And today I'll be your host, your guide, your mentor, and instructor in all things magic, witchcraft, astrology, and witchy business. And I have a very exciting and very, very interesting guest with me today that I am just so thrilled to introduce officially to all of you. Miss Leanne Rose, which I will let fully introduce herself in a moment. But I just have to give a quick shout out because the way that Leanne and I came together is through the wonderful Daniel, the past life regressionist, who many of you here in the neighborhood already know and love. So without further ado, let's dive in. Leanne, please say hello for everybody.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here, love. It's an honor to be here. So to introduce myself, obviously my name's Leanne Rose, but those of you who might already know me as a trance channel for an interdimensional collective consciousness called the Galayla Collective. So what that basically means in English terms is that I can open up my energy system and allow a very specific interdimensional collective consciousness group to speak directly through me. They use my vocal cords. They literally step into my body, if you like, and use me as a speaking platform. And the reason for that is that they are helping to introduce six-dimensional consciousness on the planet at this moment in time, which is very linked to experiencing ourselves as source energy itself and stepping into the highest state of manifestation, which is where we literally become the conscious creators of our entire reality.
This is beautiful. And already just bubbling up with so many questions. Leanne and I have spoken a little bit via message, like DMs on Instagram, but this is really the first time that we've had an in-person, well, virtual, but in-person conversation. And my Gemini Mars, you guys, is during this Gemini Mars retrograde, I am so excited. I have so many questions. So what I first want to kind of dive into, because just even hearing you say all that, my brain's like, oh my God, there's so many things I can ask you. I would say the first place that I want to go, though, is a little bit what you and I were talking about before the show, before we started, because we started a really, really great conversation that I think provides some good context for everybody. So most of you that have listened to me regularly definitely know me as a pretty grounded, very earth-based witch, straight up pagan witch. That is, I very much resonate with that. I have a regular guest on our show that all of you, at least most of you, know and love, Ashley of Starseed Shadows. So we have some starseedsy, multidimensional conversations on here. She has an Aquarius moon. We definitely go into outer space around here. Don't get me wrong. But I have found that the further I've gone into spirituality, the more my perception and understanding of space has changed a lot, has really changed a lot from these younger days and even adolescent days of there's outer space out in the sky. There are the stars. There's the comets, right? These rocks floating around. And so disconnected from us, right? So far away. So they must be so disconnected from us. Obviously, my huge deep dive into astrology changes all of this on a fundamental level. This reprograms me it's actually more like all of these old gears inside of me were finally dusted off and working properly and
I love
understanding
that.
things. That's exactly the image that came to me. I was like, oh, it was like I uncovered these parts that just hadn't been working for a long time and functioning. And now like it's really fascinating. And now that they're functioning, I'm really trying to understand what I do believe. And so one of the reasons I was so drawn to Leanne after Daniel connected us is because you have, and this is one thing Ashley and I have Starseed Shadows connect on, you have this very like quantum space, right? Multidimensional front facing messaging. Everything, like as soon as you hear all that, we are definitely being transported to space. But when you and I talk and when I read your work, when I open up your posts on Instagram, when I read your captions, you are extremely grounded and earth-based. Can you tell us a little bit about this journey for you? So like, what was that like for you? What was your impression of an understanding of space and dimensions and kind of take us through your journey a little bit? Because most people here know my journey and how I've come to start understanding the quantum field, just to give an umbrella term, but I would love to hear your story.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started off with, really launching into the elements, I suppose you call it space. And I suppose I relate to it as kind of magic, like the magical element of, and so when I would look at space, I would think of magic. That's kind of, but it's still was very disconnected for me as a child. But I was always obsessed with the idea that there had to be more. But I never really believed that there could be. There was always that kind of element of it. And during my, quote unquote, spiritual awakening, I don't really enjoy that term anymore. But, that real main catalyst of when you're really starting to awaken to the truth that we are more than human.
Right.
I really resonated with the term starseed. And I didn't feel as though I belonged. And I did feel very much like I was from a completely different star system. I didn't feel like I belonged here in any way, shape or form, which was what drew me to, the alternative stuff. I became aware of things like channeling. I became aware of things like Reiki, energy work just in general. And so I needed to kind of dive into that starseedy element. But at that point, the starseedy element, although it was pulling me towards the gorgeous, juicy, magical elements, there was still this real clinging onto the fact that I didn't belong here and my magic couldn't really manifest in the 3D reality. There was still this real belief that magic, yes, okay, I've now managed to believe that magic does exist, but I still believe that magic existed outside of being human, and it wasn't something that we could use as human beings. It was only something we could experience in our imagination at a sound bath or, that kind of thing. But as I really stepped into harnessing and crafting my gifts and stepping into who I am as an individual, and what I'm really starting to see now is me stepping into my sovereignty, like my sovereign human self, and really learning to dive into spirituality at an even deeper level. I then began to realize that me recognizing I was a starseed was just one kind of step in my kind of awakening process, if you like. It was just one step in our evolution as we begin to recognize our multidimensionality. And where I was getting stuck was thinking that I was this starseed from another planet. But what my system was actually trying to communicate with me was, you are not just from this planet. You are everywhere and all things all at once. And I've now kind of transcended that idea that I'm a starseed. And actually I'm not just a starseed. I'm source energy everywhere, everything. And, just as you are, just as everybody else is. And it really does help us to dive even deeper into that element of, and it's the reconnection piece to the human about, okay, but I did choose to come here. I chose to be in this body. The magic of being source energy still exists in this human form. In fact, it is the most magical way to actually experience ourselves as source energy. So it's actually really re-empowering when you step into that. But there's a bit of disconnection as you move towards that stuff, isn't there?
Totally. That's beautiful, because, and that's what I was telling Leanne before the show, is that, you know, one thing that I just personally, just individually never have resonated with is that sensation that is so commonly shared, and that experience so commonly shared by so many people on their spiritual path of, I don't feel at home. I feel like I'm being called home. And listening to you describe this is exactly what I believe, which is it, you know what? It's parallel to what we go through as teenagers into adolescence, into adulthood.
And do you know what's so funny about that? Sorry.
What? No,
your apologies, babes. But the funny thing about this is that what the Galayla Collective actually call what we talk about. So I teach 6th dimensional manifestation,
right?
But it's also called adult phase manifestation, and we literally talk about moving from adolescent phase to adult phase.
That is so divine. Holy cow. That is absolutely beautiful, because that's exactly what it reminded me of, is that developmental period where, and this happens at multiple stages in human development, by the way. This happens, I'm going through it right now with a preschooler, actually. And that's one of your first, like, toddler and preschool phases, is one of the first kind of rejections of your caregivers. We're meant to feel this. If your kid, if you've ever been around a young child of that age of 2 to 5 years old, they are meant to go through that mini teenager phase. They're meant to reject you and reject their caregiver, because this forms independence. This, it's a necessity to a survival and to taking care of ourselves. Absolutely. The exact same parallel happens when we move out of our parents' house, right? For the first time. And this is why such a common experience is this, like, I hate it here. Now, granted, just like life here on Earth, many of us really did have absolutely tumultuous, disastrous homes that we came from. So I'm not downplaying that at all. There are many situations where, like, we look back at our teenage years and we're like, no, it was actually hell. That's why I hated it. But no matter what, you will still find that this is, regardless of the reason, a commonly shared experience, because exactly we're meant to be called to go out on our own. And that's exactly what this reminds me of, is this, and how I believe in spirituality, essentially, that we are supposed to feel uncomfortable sometimes. We are supposed to feel unsatisfied sometimes, so that we continue moving forward and we continue growing. I would love to hear more about 6D manifestation. I think that a lot of people hear the buzz term 5D ascension. Yes. I would like to know how these compare and contrast with each other, and what 6D manifestation is.
Absolutely. So, the 5th dimensional consciousness stuff that we talk about, like, so the 5D has become a huge buzzword. And really what it is very... Sorry, you're going to have to bear with me. They kind of jump in and they get a bit excited.
Totally fine. We get that around here. Don't worry. We channel a lot. Don't you worry. Lots of messages come through on this show.
So that was one of the first messages that they gave me, was this idea of the fact that they kept giving me this image of a diamond, and they kept showing me everybody believes that they want this thing of abundance. And they were giving me the diamond to show me that. They were like, 6 points of a diamond, abundance, clarity, like shiny things, material things, money, all that kinds of stuff. And they kept drawing me to the truth of, that's not what you are actually craving. You are actually craving 6th dimensional consciousness, which is the element of us that recognizes that we are literally creating our reality from the 6th dimension as source energy itself. And so what 5D is, 5D really is the bridge to that truth, so the bridge to that consciousness, to that element of us. And it's the 5D stuff is very much that starseed energy. It's very much that, we're embracing the magic. It's very feminine in its essence. It's very kind of it's slightly unbalanced feminine, but that doesn't mean it's bad in any way, shape or form. It's just, us recognizing that element of us that needs to be recognized and enjoying the magic itself, learning to understand the magic. And it's where we meet the multidimensional self. So when we're in 5D, when we're in fifth dimensional consciousness, we are very concerned with the magic of the universe, but we still believe it exists outside of ourselves. So that state that I was talking about before, that I was very much in, that was very 5D type stuff. And you'll find that a lot of people in 5D consciousness are waiting for like the galactics to come and save us, or they're still very much believing that there's this huge war that's happening across the cosmos, and that good and evil are like warring against each other. And it's still very, very remnant of this idea of separation. There's still the illusion of separation from source when we are in fifth dimensional consciousness. It's still gorgeous. It's a little bit more elevated than the 3D, 4D stuff, which is still very, very, very fear-based and very attached to the illusion of separation from source, because it doesn't believe that source even exists. It doesn't believe in any kinds of magic at all. When we cross into 5D, we're starting to understand magic a little bit more. We're starting to open up to the idea that it's possible. But when we step into 6D, that's when we actually begin to recognize that not only is it possible, but it is us. Like, it quite literally is us. And not only is it possible for us to utilize, but it's literally our purpose to utilize it.
Oh my God. This is very validating. There are a lot of things, the best way I can describe it in like human language, because that's very hard for me sometimes. There's a lot of information that I understand on a very base and internal level. And it is so hard for me to translate it into human language sometimes.
I hear you on that one. I hear you on that one.
I really struggle with that. But especially lately, and when I say lately, I really mean 2022, which makes sense. We, astrologically speaking, every single planet that has a retrograde cycle went retrograde this year. We had one of the heaviest retrograde years that we've had in a very long time. This essentially, on a collective level, encourages a lot of slowing down, reevaluating, re-examining, and therefore redefining, reconstructing, and rebuilding and rebirthing. I've spent my time in very deep reflection this year, very, very deep. And I really find that most people, because of that indicator of that big retrograde year, most people couldn't escape that deep introspection and deep reflection of this year. It was just where we were meant to be this year. And a lot of what has been taking up my space is this idea, and I never would have been able to put it into words, but when I hear you describing it, that's what it is that we are already source energy. We hear these phrases all the time. You're already enough. You're already perfect how you are. You're worthy of all of your love and devotion right now, exactly as you are. All of these ideas. And we actually talked about this in my school community at our shadow work call yesterday evening, how, especially in this very human perspective, very 3D perspective, we feel that feels like a lie. That feels so disconnected, like we're lying to ourselves. Yeah. But the deeper I go, whether I'm meditating with my guides, whether I'm asking questions of the cosmos, the answers I find over and over and over again, and Leanne, people don't like this answer, is that the answer is already in you. You already really have it. I can't give it to you. I can help you try to figure out how to translate your own soul language. I can try to give you the tools to translate your own messages, but I'm having a hard time convincing people that they don't need anybody else. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So that is so bloody juicy, and I'm yes.
This is why I was like, let's just hit record. This is going to be such a beautiful conversation.
So this might land really challengingly with people. I don't even know if that was the right way of putting it. But one thing that I'm getting really, really clear on is as we step into sovereignty, our victim archetype falls away. It's always going to be there, but the hold that it has on us is going to loosen. And as that happens, it's going to try with every single piece that it has to stick around. And so we call this your fear frequency. And so we divide this into like your source frequency, your truth, the truth that you literally are source. Like that resides within you right now, like right now. And there is still this piece of you that we also call your human self that will keep trying to convince you otherwise. Now that is literally a piece of the puzzle. It's literally a part of the entire system of you experiencing yourself as source. You come here to experience the illusion, and your human is the piece of you that tries to convince you of the illusion. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to reconnect to yourself as source because you would just be source.
Right. How better to teach somebody something than through experience where they actualize a concept for themselves?
Exactly. And that's the only real way that we actually get it. It's the only way we get it, because what we are actually teaching people, regardless of what it is that we are doing in any kinds of coaching, teaching, anything that we are doing, all we are really helping people to step into is an energy within themselves. That's all we are trying to get them to. And if a person is still believing that that energy has to come from outside of themselves, then they are still in unbalanced feminine energy. They are still placing their power outside of themselves. And so it's completely elusive, and they'll never be able to find what it is that they are looking for until they go within. Because the truth is, you will never find it until you go within, because that is what you are looking for.
Yes. And it's fascinating because we are taught this in parallel lessons on the micro human scale. Again, like, you can't find true happiness until you're happy with yourself. You can't, right? We have these micro examples, and this is why it makes me smile so much, because I'm like, of course, it's just a parallel of this experience, because all of our experiences, this is what we talk about on the show, you guys, all of these experiences are meant to be parallel. It's why we can get the information from the cosmos that we can. They're all representative examples of one another, of the same message trying to get through over and over again.
Because literally, like, this is the elements of us that we are really, really stepping into now on a deeper level. I'm sure you've already heard the truth that your internal reality creates your external world.
Yes.
But if you really, really asked yourself how much you actually embody that truth, I bet the percentage is very, very small. And this year, like, I've literally, like, I finally get what that means. And I know that I'm still going to keep dropping into deeper and deeper levels of it. But I'm finally really learning to understand that literally nothing exists except source, and that I am source. And so therefore, literally everything in the universe, everything is source energy itself. And when we can relate to ourselves as source energy itself, which is removed from the human, so it doesn't have that egoic element of that separateness.
Right.
That stuff starts to really make sense. And you start to see those patterns unfolding in a way that is like, I literally can't describe the magic that it like unveils for your human, because your human suddenly feels like this tiny, tiny piece of an incredibly magic puzzle that is all put together. And every single piece that is kind of interwoven, you begin to really recognize just how intricately detailed the magic of everything that you are as source energy is, deliberately weaving itself through itself to experience itself in a way that is just, if you think about what source energy is, it's just pure love, pure joy, pure ecstasy. And every single given moment in all of our entire lives is ourselves as source energy trying to reflect that back to us in a way that we can understand, because we are source energy literally trying to experience ourselves through this entire intricate, incredible process of being alive.
Wow. That is an absolutely fascinating perspective that I really think that we don't hear, and we definitely don't consider very often, including folks like myself that say like, we're all part of source. We're all part of the divine collective, all of this. And I really, so that branches me perfectly into my next question, which is, how do all of these collectives fit into this? So you have a collective that you channel. I assume there's many.
Yes.
Can you tell me especially for any like really fresh beginners around here, what that looks like, how that plays a role in what you just described? Are they a part of that universe? Exactly.
So I'm learning more and more and more about this every single day. And this has been a relatively new thing for me. And as I step more into the truth that we are all source energy, this has been something that's been really difficult for me to articulate and actually claim.
I totally get that.
And what I'm really starting to recognize is that the Galayla Collective are source frequency. They are source energy, but just as much as you are source energy and I am source energy. And sometimes we put source energy on this like massive pedestal. But what I'm really starting to recognize, there is no pedestal. That pedestal is an illusion. Everything is source energy. And so what my collective represent are certain frequencies of source energy that are set on the intention of source energy experiencing itself as source energy. That's what my collective represent, because that's the sovereign human piece. When they channel through me, that's the sovereign human. You can think of that as the filter that they come through. And so like attracts like, all of the higher frequencies of source energy that align with the truth that source energy wants to experience itself as source energy gather as my collective and speak through me. That's how I understand the Galayla Collective now. And when another channel has, their own collective that comes through their sovereign human self, that comes through their piece, they could very well be sharing elements of source frequency that are within the Galayla Collective, but it wouldn't be the Galayla Collective because it's coming through a different filter with a different intention. So all of it, every single piece of it, regardless of what we are actually doing, every single piece of all of these collectives hold an intention, and it all serves the whole. Every single piece of these collectives, in the same way that we serve the whole as individual pieces of source energy, all of these collectives serve the pieces of source energy as well. So what they show me is that there are 4 dominant energies in the universe. And for the most part, that's kind of what most of these collectives fit into. That when we're talking about something on a macro level, so if you're talking about a collective consciousness, they usually tend to fit into one of these frequencies. And a lot of the collective consciousnesses that we have seen have been very 5D. They've been bringing through those the magical frequencies and the magical energies that help bridge the gap from our human self to the magic. And they've been really helping people to understand that we are more than human, and there is magic out there. But actually, as you described, 2022 has been a huge crack open year of source energy really beginning to understand itself on a whole new level. And so it's opened up new things for us, which means we're going to see a lot more of these collective consciousnesses that are coming through to display 6-dimensional consciousness type information. As far as I'm aware, we're the first ones talking about it, but I don't know that. There could be somebody else talking about that I don't know about across the planet. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's all source frequency. Every single piece of it is source frequency. And I think the piece of us that, when I was first like really recognizing this and they were really showing me, like, we are source frequency. At that point, my human was still very much putting source frequency on a pedestal. And so I was really scared to share it because I was like, oh, people are going to think I'm like really, really egotistical, and they're going to think I'm this, and I'm going to think I'm that. But I'm really like, but they just keep showing me, no, but so are you. So is everyone. Like, everything is source energy. Like, that's the piece that we need to really start understanding and landing in the body now, that everything is completely divine. Every single piece of it, every single tiny, weeny little notch, even us as our quote unquote flawed humanness, every single piece of it is source. And we are all just source energy, literally playing around with itself and just enjoying itself through all these different perspectives.
It's almost like we're like toddlers.
Yes.
Figuring it out. That's
Yes.
really the parallel I made. Like it is. It's like on that grand scale, humans, this human version.
Absolutely.
It's like being a toddler, which is, you know what your job is as a toddler? To figure it out. And guess how you do that? By like banging into things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough. It's also pure joy. If you've ever looked at and spoken with a toddler, it is so undiluted, pure energy. Whether it's anger in the moment, frustration, joy, laughter, whatever it is pure and undiluted at that stage. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly where we are at as a human race, is like, this is how in the grand fabric of the universe, how we're figuring it out. We're in our toddler phase, which is, you're supposed to be like getting roughed up a little bit. That's like the nature of the beast. And that's also what makes the entire thing inherently beautiful and divine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the core things that they show me as well, I'm just gonna plug my laptop in, sorry.
Yes.
But one of the core things that they show me is there has been this kind of obsession with getting rid of anything that feels uncomfortable.
Yes.
And
we talk about that a lot around here.
Oh, yes. So they show me this in kind of terms of like the two of the dominant energies, which both kind of sit into the truth frequency or source frequency, the truth that we are source. There is a huge element of us that knows that we are source energy and knows that we are inherently magic and that this experience is a juicy experience.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also half of us that is in our fear frequency, believe in the illusion of separation from source. But what they show me is that the whole entire reason that we, even the idea of saying that we come here as human beings, because even that doesn't quite fit, because all of it is happening all at once. Like, we didn't really come here, we're experiencing everything all at once. Time is an illusion, all of that kind of juicy magic stuff. But we won't go into that. Is what they show me is that the entire purpose of being human is to do the bumping into things, is to do the messy stuff, is to get it, quote unquote wrong, is to feel incredibly uncomfortable. Because when we are source energy, we are source energy. And yeah, it feels amazing, but you don't really get to appreciate the magic of that until you've experienced a contrast. So they talk about this element of being in a completely lit room. And if you've lived in that room all your life, you probably wouldn't even have a word for light, because you don't know anything other than light. But the moment that you switch that light off, you have contrast, you have a context in which to understand it. You automatically then begin to experience desire. And that's the thing that they also show me, is that contrast helps us to experience desire. When we are literally source energy, we have everything we could possibly need ever. We don't want for anything. We are just being juicy goodness. But when we experience the illusion of separation from that, it generates a desire, and it means that we can then begin to create. Because if we didn't have a desire, then energy would just be static. But if we have a direction in which to channel our source energy, i.e. if there is an illusion that our source energy isn't somewhere, then we get to actually do something with it. We get to actually experience it in motion. And so being human is actually really, really a balancing act of divine feminine, which is that juicy feeling goodness of the source frequency, that gorgeous love frequency, experiencing itself through action, which is that divine masculine piece of, let's do something with this. And so they also show me this gorgeous, they gave my client this really juicy metaphor of when we're in our divine feminine energy, when we're being in our source frequency, it's almost like a ray of sunlight, and it's gorgeous, it's juicy, it's, it's shiny and it's pretty, but it's not incredibly useful until it comes into contact with something. And when we are actually human, when we are able to filter the beingness of that energy through something, they give us this kind of view of like a magnifying glass. So like the ray of sunlight being filtered through the magnifying glass, it's then harnessed, focused, and it becomes something. So it can, it can literally create fire, create transformation. It can do whatever, wherever you need to direct it towards. But it's that juicy element of that divine feminine of feeling all the juicy goodness of source, and then the divine masculine of putting it into practice. And we wouldn't get to actually do that if we didn't experience the contrast of our fear frequency. So where most of us are trying to avoid the fear stuff, we get you to really embrace it and learn to utilize it, because it's part of you as source energy, and it's actually an exquisite part of the magic.
Hey neighbor, I want to take a moment to thank our episode sponsor for today, the Goddess Provisions monthly subscription box. Receiving this monthly box of magic has become such a favorite and sacred form of my self-care every single month, and I can't even forget to do it because it gets delivered right to my door. Every box is a specially curated theme, and all of the items regularly retail over $100 consistently. Plus, you're helping to support and find more small business and makers as well. You can get your box for just $33 a month, plus free shipping in the US. Get yours today and support That Witch podcast by using the link in our show notes below. You're talking my language. You're 100% talking my language, and that language is Pluto. This is Plutonian themes in astrology. This is everything we learn from our slowest moving planet, which essentially translates to this is what brings our most profound transformation, because it is the longest building and therefore the longest lasting. In Plutonian work, and we talk about this a lot around here because I'm quite a daughter of Pluto, we learn through extremes. I talk about this a lot. We learn and experience through extremes. And I just got this wonderful question from a neighbor not that long ago on Instagram, and she reached out and asked me, I believe and resonate with that we choose this life. I align with that, all of that. What's the question that's weighing heaviest on my heart is why would people choose the suffering? How could we choose the trauma and the tragedy and the death? And I mean, all of it, the worst of the worst. And I first and foremost always answer similarly to you, which is my answer is always developing on this. My beliefs around it is always growing. But from where I'm at right now, we have to experience, if we do not open ourselves up and we really do block ourselves off from feeling the absolute worst of the worst, we will not experience our capacity of the best of the best. We won't, because we have no frame of reference for it. I could not agree more with that. I feel that in my bone of bones when I hear that and think about that concept. Like, that is the only logical answer for me, is that because without that contrast, like you say, there is no frame of reference. It would, for our conceptualization, it would be impossible. It would be impossible to actually open ourselves up to the kind of ecstasy and pure joy we're seeking, because we're cutting off part of our channel in the first place. So if you cut it off at one part, you're cutting it off at all of it, quite honestly, at the source of all of it. Our emotions, our ethereal experience are one of our main gateways to our energetic channels. I absolutely believe that you can access this through your air and your fire elementals as well. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, one of our instantaneous back doors we always have open and available for us to our spiritual and ethereal experience is our emotional energy channel. It's the only reason that it makes sense why we have them in the first place. Otherwise, I tell people all the time, wouldn't things just be neat and tidy and easy and it makes so much sense with what you're saying, because without that frame of reference, if everything was quote unquote perfect, like living in and experiencing pure source energy, if there was never any kind of frame of reference, ever, any kind of experience. I know how many of you out there have experienced this for yourself, because you yourself have gone through the thick of it. You've gone through some shit in your life, and you see other people that haven't gone through that kind of experience, and they can't appreciate what they have and where they're at. That's a micro example of exactly what we're talking about. And therefore, shocker that I'm going to bring it back to shadow work. This is exactly why we are not supposed to shut off and hide our shadows, and why shadow integration is which is your fear frequency. That's really what I hear there. Yes. Because shadows to me are our projections and our fears and our unhealed wounds. Which, by the way, the only reason they're lashing out is because they're dying to be accepted and cared for and embraced. Just like you said, it's a divine part of ourselves. And the longer we tell ourselves it's not, the more strongly we tell ourselves it's a disgusting, terrible, lower, degraded part of myself, it will always stay that way. You will not be embodying and embracing yourself on a whole level, and you will continually keep blocking yourself off from your own divinity. Oh my God, I love this so much.
Exactly. And
beautiful.
The piece that I'm really starting to understand as well as I move through this stuff is that when we learn to see our fear or our shadow from that point of view, we learn to actually embrace it as part of the journey. And there's this piece of us, our human is constantly obsessed with trying to get rid of all of our shadow. Like, we don't want it to be possible. No, get rid.
Avoid the bad stuff, get rid of the shadow, banish our negative thoughts. Yes.
Yeah. And whilst, to some extent, it is part of the journey for us as source frequency is moving towards our source frequency. But we have to understand that process is never done. As long as we are human, we will always experience our fear frequency to reconnect with our source frequency. And the moment that you actually embody the truth of that, the fear frequency actually doesn't feel fearful anymore. You just see it for what it is. It's this golden opportunity of your system going, oh, look at this place where we can journey back to ourselves as source. Like, let's dive in. Like, it's so juicy, and you get to enjoy it. Like, you get to you be like sitting and crying and be like, but how juicy is this? Like, it's actually amazing. Like,
yes. I'm understanding so much of this through my mother archetype. It's not even funny, because the moment I became a mom and I was able to step outside of my own ego, I mean, not perfectly by any means, but because good Lord, but it is, you do have, in almost a survival way that happens. You biologically, you have this thing, you have to keep it alive. You are instinctually driven to not only keep it alive, but to help it thrive, which from our programming, we think is keep it happy. And that is not actually the case.
No.
Which is why that was what was programmed into so many of us, which is why we grew up and went, I'm sad, I'm broken. I'm angry, I'm broken. I feel uncomfortable and shitty. I feel embarrassed. That's a big one. I feel embarrassed. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken. No. When I had to watch my daughter go through, and this happens every single day, when I have to watch her go through experiences, the good ones, the bad ones, every single thing in between, I'm able to remove my opinion, my human judgment from it, and go, look at how beautiful this is when we give a human safe space to just experience, to just develop, to just grow. Again, obviously there you learn safety through limitations. That's your role as parent archetype. But I think, and I've learned so much about myself through my inner child because of my parent archetype role now. And everything that you're talking about just resonates so strongly with how often I talk to people about how we fucking talk to ourselves, how we respond to ourselves when we're feeling the uncomfortable feelings, when we're feeling discomfort, when we're feeling anger, when we're feeling sadness, distress, grief, whatever it is. Really what it comes down to, if you are able to look at yourself like Leanne is describing, if you're able, and like I've described, if you're able to look at yourself as this just innocent human, just here experiencing, just figuring it out to the best of your capabilities are able to at this moment. And that grows a little bit every day. Like, don't you think it's a little bit easier, you guys? Don't you think it's a little bit easier to talk to yourself with some understanding, with kind of that omniscient perspective, that source perspective of, this is an experience. And just like I wouldn't shit on a 3-year-old for dropping their ice cream, right? You'd be like, I hate when stuff like that happens. I'm so sorry you dropped your ice cream. That sucks, right? You don't, that's all. Like, if you could talk to yourself the same way through your human experiences, oh my Lord, how much easier would it be to tap into and just feel the pureness of your energy channels, quite honestly. That's what I was driven to this year, was the purity of my energy channels.
And it's when you give yourself that self-love, isn't it? Like, it opens you up, and that is your source frequency. Because source is love, and when you are able to meet yourself with that love, and I'm not just talking like bubble baths and you're gonna be okay. I'm talking like genuine, like really see yourself as that 3-year-old and like, gosh, I just love you, and you are going through this, and I'm here for you, and what's gonna make it better in this moment. Like, that's your source frequency. And this idea that source exists outside of ourselves is the illusion, because that is literally you as source energy going, I embrace it all, and I embrace you, every single piece of you.
And I'm not abandoning myself, and I'm not going anywhere. That's one of the biggest things we've started talking about in the community is, don't do that repeated trauma and pattern that was done to you where it's like, I have to fix it. It's not about that. It's about not abandoning yourself when things get messy and loving yourself anyways through it. And I would say especially through it.
Exactly. And that literally is, that's what I'm really starting to notice, is that life literally is about those day-to-day moments of where you honestly bone level commit to yourself, to love yourself through any situation, and to know that you can handle yourself in any situation because you love yourself enough to do it. Like, whatever needs to be done, you get it. Like, so a lot of what we see in this like 5D community type stuff, which is what we're like moving more from now, is that a lot of this stuff was placed outside. I'm waiting for the universe to save me, or I'm waiting for the universe to show me what my next step is. But the piece that they're missing there is that they are the universe. And actually it's up to them to decide what their next step is, to choose and honor themselves enough and to trust themselves enough as source energy, as the universe, to know that they've got this. Like, you've literally, when we say you've got the answers inside you, we don't just mean, it's not like that passing comment. It literally is, you have this source frequency, you have that love, you have that trust for yourself right now.
Exactly.
Own it and use it. Like,
that's where the access point is. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm like, I'm telling you, I promise you, because here's what happens to me, Leanne. I'm a witch, so I get a lot of this question. And I'm a death witch, so I get a lot. Holy cow, I get so many questions about possession. It's not even funny. Oh my fucking God. The amount of questions that I get about, and I do not mean this disrespectfully to anyone who's ever reached out to me. You're very programmed to believe this the way that you believe it, and I'm not invalidating your experience. I'm trying to instill this deep and true autonomy in you, that it is not possible for anyone to curse, hex you, for a spirit to become attached to you, to possess you, without you giving that permission. And by the way, at any moment, and I mean this, and this is probably the hardest part to grasp, at any moment, with the simplest shift in your mind, as long as you know that, you can make anything go away. You have that. When you and I talk about ultimate creator of your reality, I have been talking a lot about this, because we know it's already true. We know that we're already in control of it. The placebo effect proves this. We've talked about this on the show so many times. We've proven it on a human micro level through the placebo effect. We literally create our own reality with our perception. Our perception is probably our most powerful tool. Probably.
Absolutely.
And I get a lot of people that reach out to me and say, are you a medium? Do you know any mediums that could help my friend get rid of this dark attachment, this dark entity? They were messing around with something they shouldn't have, and et cetera, et cetera. I can't tell, and nobody likes this answer. I never get responded to, rarely. When I give this answer, it's just the truth. But the truth is that you can pay person after person. You can go to person after person. The only reason it's going to work that some medium removes this attachment is because you fucking decided that it works.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's fascinating. And I'm like, that, because that's the placebo effect. I don't use that term to downplay the way we unfortunately do in the scientific community. Placebo effect. I'm like, that's insanely powerful. And we just throw it around like it's this silly little placebo effect. I'm like, correct. A person manifested their own reality through belief alone.
Pretty fucking amazing, let's be honest.
Yes. It makes a lot of sense why we do this brushing off of it, because I think that's the fear frequency that you're talking about. I think that that's our shadow. I think that's our ego saying we are separate from this. Separate. Our ego serves a role. You guys remember we talked about ego? That's our sun placement in astrology. Without our ego, why would we want to keep ourselves alive? Why would we want to even make it to the next day? We need ego. It plays just as an important of I love how you described a piece in the fabric, woven into the fabric. Our ego is a piece of that as well. It's just that it creates this illusion for a reason, so that we have this human experience where we feel like we are totally separate from source, where we feel like we really are separate from the magic in our universe, because the most powerful way that you can actualize that information is by experiencing that it's like a reunion, honestly.
Exactly.
It's a soul reunion. Leanne, tell me about, I would love it if you, toward the end of our show, would channel a collective message for our listeners. But before we get there, I would love to hear who you work with and the kind of work that you do with your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I work with anyone and everyone that is ready to really dive into the truth of who they are as source energy and are ready to really step into the next level. The kinds of things that we do is obviously we take you through all kinds of multidimensional, incredible activations. We get to go on all kinds of quantum journeys and all of that kinds of juiciness with the Galayla Collective. And little old me as a human gets to help your human understand the relevance of all that kinds of stuff. But basically, we call it sixth dimensional manifestation because we are tapping into sixth dimensional consciousness, which is helping you to recognize that you are literally creating your reality, because that's where the element of you as the architect resides. So there are literally like unlimited dimensions, but we just talk about 9 as a framework. Otherwise we would blow everybody's brain. So we just talk about, so the reason that we call it sixth dimensional manifestation is because that's the piece of you that we're tapping into, the piece of you that's literally creating your reality. And we have a process that literally helps you to anchor that in a really experiential way, so that you get to literally see it playing out in your reality, and you get to see how powerful you are, and you drop more into the belief that it's possible for you, so that is interwoven into your internal reality. So once you believe that it's possible, in the same way that we were talking about, the only way that stuff is going to work is if you believe that it works, we help you to believe more that it's possible for you to actually be the creator of your reality. And the main thing that we are teaching you to do is to remember that you are source energy. We call it 6D manifestation, but it's the side effects is that you get to manifest things. The real thing that we are really helping you to step into is the truth of who you are as source frequency. And we help you to begin to recognize how powerful your internal world is. And we get you to actually walk the process of understanding how what you are creating inside of you is then being reflected outside of you. And then we show you how to change it so that you can see it changing. And the more that you get to see that, the more you get to believe, oh, holy shit, like I really am creating my reality. And then we send you off into the world to continue to create your reality. So it's amazing, magic, juicy stuff. And I'm so, so grateful that this is my life now.
Amazing. How long have you been officially in profession, like in business? And I would love to know what that transition was like for you taking this from a spiritual, very personal experience and then creating a career out of it?
Yeah, so I've been engaged in spirituality ever since I was like 16. I've been obsessed with all things spiritual since then. I was actually a mental health nurse for many years, a therapist, became a yoga teacher, always knew I wanted to do something spiritual, just I had no idea what it looked like. And I spontaneously opened my channel when I was around 23, 24, I think. I can't really remember the age. So there was this constant personal unfolding. And it wasn't actually until I really emerged into my fear frequency last year with the threat of being I almost lost my nursing job because I refused to get the COVID jab I'm not going to go into that. But it was almost like my soul calling me to be like, are you going to really dive into fear frequency, give in to this thing that you don't believe is right? Or are you going to follow your heart and do something different? So I literally started my business a year ago. Had no idea what I was doing, Danny. I'm not going to lie to you. I had no idea what it looked like. I didn't even know that I was going to be utilizing channeling at that point, because at that point I couldn't trans channel. I didn't know that the Galayla Collective were a part of me at that point.
Okay.
And it wasn't until around, I don't think they came through until around January, February. And I started to share messages. And I mean, that in and of itself was, I mean, I don't know if you ever watched me channel, but it's not very pretty. It can be a little bit like, oh gosh, what's she doing? Like, she looks a bit odd. So that was a journey in and of itself. But once I started to become a lot more confident, and obviously my channel was open then, so I was receiving all of this kind of incredible information, and I was transforming at like a DNA level. It kind of just escalated from there, and I left my job not like a good few months ago, and just that was it. I found my calling. I'm loving it, and I'm not going back.
Wow, that's so cool. What an aligned, like authentic way to enter into the entrepreneur sphere, which is kind of a little Shark Tank sometimes.
Definitely. And
but we're taking over spiritual industry.
Oh yeah,
we're taking over.
I'm really starting to see businesses like it is the most potent spiritual journey you can ever go on. So, and I do honestly genuinely believe that like everybody has a business in them. Every single person, every single one of us, at the height of our creative potential, we have a business inside of us. Whether that's, being the CEO of a company that already exists and you just get to have real creative control over it, or whether you start it up from scratch, I really do believe that business is evolving and changing. I've noticed that with a lot of my clients have gone on to really to do business differently, like so much more ethically and with a lot more heart invested in it. So it's exciting to see what's going to unfold over the next few years, particularly on the online space as well.
Absolutely. The entire pandemic caused like tons and tons of damage, don't get me wrong, but one of the things that I'm very grateful that it is like inevitably rebirthing is professionalism in general, and just livelihood, business, all of it, anything under that giant umbrella. There is an absolute demand for ethical business. There's an absolute demand for it. The days of like not really caring about where the product came from, who's behind it, what kind of person they are, those days are like running out more and more and more and more. Absolutely. And I have been saying since the very beginning of 2022 that this is going to be one of the most significant decades. We are in an it's kind of like the 1960s. Yeah. And every decade has their huge impact, don't get me wrong. But like that was one of the last in United States history. Actually, global history was like the 1960s globally were and I see that reflected in the 2020s now. We're due for it. We're due for Absolutely. Kind of burn it all to the ground decade. We just are. Like, that's how much is actually rebirthing. And I, part of the reason I asked you about it is because we are seeing, the spiritual industry, you would think would automatically be the medicine that all professional industries need. But we're obviously finding that there are huge pockets within the spiritual industry that are as equally unethical as in their practices as some of our largest corporate examples. It's just on a micro level.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool because we do deserve trade and exchange, the energy exchange for the work that we do, the experience that we have. It is so incredibly difficult to be a business owner. Holy cow, it's so hard. So we deserve it. And long gone are the days, well, they're going very quickly, of just charging people whatever you want because you can, because they'll pay for it.
Yes. Yeah. And there's this kind of, I'm seeing this huge shift at the moment of this element of, and there's this balance that's happening of, you'll get a lot of people that don't want to charge at all because they don't trust themselves as source and they don't believe that they're worthy of that kind of stuff.
And that does its own harm too.
Yes, 100%. And then you do get, the people that actually, they're not very connected to their source frequency at all and they are doing it for personal gain and all of that kind of stuff. But the piece that I kind of really want to, that I'm starting to see unfold a lot more, is that if we want the world to change, then resources have to be in the right hands.
Yep.
People who are caring of the planet and who want evolution, who want growth, and who want the planet to be okay, who want people on the planet to be okay. It's important for us to hold those resources so that we can actually utilize them in a way that is beneficial for our planet. And if we keep putting ourselves on the back burner and keep saying, oh no, I'm not going to charge, such and such, and then we keep allowing those people who are manipulating and who are not beneficial for the planet to keep holding those resources.
Yes.
So that's the piece that I want to kind of like remind people, if you are questioning, or can I really charge this stuff? If there is a part of you that knows that you are doing this full of sin, and I'll be completely honest with you, Danny, I've got huge kind of aspirations for where I want my business to go. But the reason for that is because I want to invest in solar energy and I want to save the planet. Like there's like
because
huge
of the impact
elements
you want to have.
Exactly. So there's there is material wealth that I'm seeking around that stuff, but it's for the planet. And I want to be comfortable as well. I'm not going to say that I don't want to be comfortable in all those pieces, but when people who are very connected to these elements are actually utilizing and going after that and saying, no, like this is what I'm doing for the whole. And when you remember that you are connected to the whole and you trust yourself to be connected to the whole and to utilize those resources for the whole, that's what's going to heal us on a planetary level, is when we all stand up to do our piece, to do our part.
Exactly. When we diminish our own worth and value, and then we refuse to take up any space because of that, we're giving all of our space and giving all of that space for this to continue happening. I totally and completely agree with that. And that I think that that's such a beautiful perspective to remember and to remind everybody, is that remember who you are on a fundamental level. That, like, a lot of money or a lot of just, I'll call it financial comfort, because that number fluctuates proportionately, you know what I mean, to one's, it's so different person to person what you would call financial comfort, you know what I mean? It just totally and completely depends. But I really truly believe that if you look at yourself as because I know if you're listening to this show that you resonate with these things and you care about the evolution of the actual collective, and you know that your evolution is a part of that. So think about when those resources and that money goes into your hands. It's complete. You're picturing that money and those resources going into corrupt hands. And so you automatically go, oh, no, I don't want any part of it. Yes, we should be taking control of it. That would be so much more beneficial, because I really do believe that if we all tap into that business power within ourselves, and I love how you said, like, that could be owning your own company. It might be working for a company that's already established. But when you're tapped into and embodying your business energy and your business source within yourself, I really firmly believe that if we do that as a collective, we'll set ourselves free from the absolute prison that business and professionalism has created around us, where we feel trapped on earth because we have to pay exorbitant amounts to live here. And, you know, all of those kinds of things. So I really think if this is why I talk about these kinds of like professional and business concepts on the show. We've done, and we've started like financial conversations around here, because I really believe the more that we go, oh, that's like an old white man's thing, I don't fit into that. I'm like, well, then you're keeping it being their thing. Let's take it.
Exactly.
Let's take it and make it our own.
Exactly. And the Galayla Collective actually spoke very, very early on about money. They spoke about like the light work and money wounds. And I really shied away from that stuff, because I was very much in that frequency of, oh no, I'm just going to pretend that doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
All that kind of stuff. But actually, and I would actually love to dive into one of those conversations with you, babe, at another point, because I've got so much to say on that stuff of like, money literally is just energy. And at the moment, all we are seeing is we are just seeing a reflection of where we are terrified of our own power. That is what we are literally seeing reflected back to us in the collective. And when we learn to embrace the fact that we are abundant in here right now, when we learn to literally realize that we are already tapped into unlimited abundance, and that we are worthy of unlimited abundance, because we are inherently this gorgeous, juicy magic thing that is source energy, that's when things will begin to shift. It doesn't shift when we start tampering with the external world. It shifts when we embody that on a deep, deep level.
I love, oh my God, it's so true. I'll definitely have you. I want to have you back on for a conversation I want to start having around here, because it's so necessary for healing a lot of the wounds in this industry. I definitely want to talk about finances and business energetics and how it plays a role in that we are already source energy, all of this, because I really, really, really believe that we are in the middle of like a grand rebirth. And it's our responsibility not to hide away from these conversations. I've even, you know what, y'all, just to like put my money where my mouth is, I have been trying to listen to financial podcasts. Do I feel so intimidated and dumb? And yes, all of those things. And like, I don't belong. Sure. All those things. And I can name so many experiences in my life that I felt that way. I used to feel that way at the beginning of this business. I felt that way when I started this podcast. I felt that way when I started my health insurance job years ago. And I walked in, I cried on my first day because I was like, they may as well be speaking a different language. I can't understand. Who do I think I am taking a job I have no experience in? You are an incredibly adaptive, constantly learning human being that is really capable of infinite information and learning and capability. And so this is definitely something, yes, I would love to have you back on and talk about, because it's important. It's just so incredibly important. So I would love it. Yes, if you would walk us through, so we do like collective readings around here. Every Monday I pull a card. Once in a while I do like a full tarot spread for the community, and I kind of walk everybody through getting in the right energetic place. So will you just kind of take it away for us, Leanne? And I've never had anybody, I don't think I've asked anybody to formally channel on the show before. So this will be a first for us.
Fabulous. Yeah. So we don't tend to usually do any prep. I usually just bring them through. Because something for you to be aware of is that what you are hearing from them is only really 20% of what you are receiving from them. 80% of what they actually transmit is purely energetic. So you might feel things in the body, you might kind of sense things might start to shift. It's a lot of kind of a lot of frequency activation type stuff that you might be aware of. The other thing to note is that they make a funny noise on the way in, just to let you know. It is bizarre. It's like a verbal handshake. That's what they call it. Helps them to kind of equate with my system. And obviously those of you at home can't actually see me, but for you, Danny, my face will twitch and my hands will move, and they do a lot with the face. It's not very attractive. So
I'm so intrigued. Don't you worry. I'm such an open person. Yes, this is amazing. No judgment here. Trust me.
Amazing. And they're very, very chatty. They love a good conversation. So they will probably introduce themselves, say hello. And you might just want to introduce yourself and maybe ask them whatever you want, and they'll answer.
Okay.
Yes. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, dear souls.
Hello.
We are the Galayla Collective.
Hello.
Thank you very kindly, dear soul, for offering us platform to chat to your neighbors.
Thank you for being here with us. My name is Danny Wright. I go by that witch next door. I've just been enjoying a lovely conversation with Leanne Rose.
We were about, dear soul. We were listening. Very interesting. Beautiful energies flowing between you, dear souls. And we understand that you are looking for a message for those of you listening here today that would be helpful. Are you not, dear soul?
Yes, please. We would be so grateful.
And so let us do something fun, shall we not?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And so, breathing in, dear soul, and opening your channel as you know how to do. We are going to do something slightly collaborative, very different. Gal herself has not even experienced this.
Thank you.
And so, breathing deeply, opening your channel, your guys going to drop in a particular theme for you to share with us, dear soul, and we will go from there.
Okay. Winter is the theme coming forth for me right now.
Beautiful, dear soul. And so, topic will be winter blues, dear soul. There is much polarity in the state of winter. Everything very quiet, very still, very sleepy. And there are two ways that you can experience this through your perception. One way, fear frequency based, would be to shrink away from the cold, to feel very, giving us word, depressed, feeling very, very sad, missing the sunshine, craving for something different, always running towards the warmth, constantly telling yourself how the dark nights are very, 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 very unhelpful, are very dark, very depressing, and very restrictive in your energy, dear souls. But there's also another perspective. Winter, in all of its frosty glory, can also be incredibly magical. Think of it through the eyes of a child that has seen the snow for the first time. They are not scared of the cold. They are wanting this new experience of this white fluffy stuff that is suddenly surrounding their entire world, completely transforming the landscape that they once knew. How new, how special, how magical. And also, the stillness allows you to hear the birds a little more than you would have done. The sparkle of the sunshine as it moves through the clouds and glistens on the frost on the ground brings everything to feel quite magical. The elements of the air suddenly noticeable as you breathe. Everything much more quiet, much more still. And if you are able to be still with this, to be one with it, you will also experience this incredible stillness within, the incredible magic within. If you allow yourself to be with the season, rather than trying to fight it, trying to picture your next holiday, trying to find the sun, if you allow yourself to be with what is in this wintry moment of magical, frosty goodness, you will find your center. When you embrace the cold, dark nights and you huddle inside to embrace the warmth of your home, to be grateful for the heating that flows through your house, to be grateful for the warmth of your partner as you snuggle up in your cozy socks. To be grateful for the lights that illuminate your home. When you allow yourself to see all the beauty that winter can bring, rather than running from this, trying to make it something that it is not. It is here that you meet your source frequency, dear souls. It is here that you learn to live in this moment, in the abundance of this moment now.
Thank
Do
you
you have
very,
anything
very
to
much.
Most welcome,
That's beautiful.
dear soul.
I know how strongly needed this message of stillness is for myself and my community. I'm so grateful. Can we thank you for your time and bring Leanne back with us?
Of course, dear soul. We have no doubt that we will meet again at some point. Most
Yes.
grateful, dear soul. Sending you and, of course, your neighbors. Oodles and oodles of love. Goodbye, dear souls.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Hello.
How does that feel right after? Where do you go? What do you feel?
I kind of hang out in the background. I'm kind of, I see it as me kind of sitting in the back of my head, kind of watching what's going on. And honestly, it's different every time. Every single time that they come through, obviously they're bringing through so much energy. And it's usually very, very nourishing for my system. It can be quite draining as well at sometimes. So sometimes I can feel very, very, very present when I come back. And sometimes I can feel a little bit drained and a little bit tired. It all depends on what the energy is bringing to my system. But right now I feel a little bit in-betweeny. And I noticed that when I channel, the animals seem to be attracted. And as we have a cat that is, she's not actually our cat. She just comes and stays with us every once in a while. And she's just come to join the party. So
that makes a lot of sense to me when you say like attracts like, so that purity attracts that purity.
Definitely.
That animals have. I love that. That was really, really, really special. And it was really cool to connect with you and with the collective, because as soon as I opened up my energy channel and asked for a theme, I felt the physical heaviness of winter like fall in my hands.
Wow.
And I knew how important that message of stillness was. And those were the words that came through, and it almost made me cry. That was really, 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 really beautiful. Wow. That was really cool. That was really special. Thank you for sharing your magic with us, Leanne. That was amazing. We are very excited to have you back.
It's actually the first time they've ever been like, let's do a collaborative message. So that was quite fun for me in the background. I was like, oh yeah, they call me the girl, by the way. So
I love that. Oh, I caught that. I loved it. I really loved that energy that came through. And this podcast is a very, very, very integral part of my mission. We share big stuff here. So I think that's why we were supposed to talk today and why we'll be talking again, because we share important stuff.
Definitely.
Now, Leanne, before we go, please tell everybody, where can we find you? Where can we follow you? How can we support you?
So you can find me, at the moment, I live over on Instagram. And you can find me at I am Leanne Rose. Be good if I got the handle right, wouldn't it? I'm also over on TikTok with the same handle and on YouTube at the same handle, but I'm not quite as kind of active over there. And I am due to be getting a new website in January as well, which will be www.thegalaylcollective.com as well. But that's not live just yet.
Okay, perfect. I will make sure that everything is linked in the show notes below so that everybody can connect with you and follow you. We're so excited to have you part of our community. This was a really amazing episode. Thank you so much for being here with us, Leanne.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your time today and every day. You are such an important part of this community. I hope, if nothing else, this episode really wholly reminded you of that. Thank you again, and I hope that you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your week. Make sure you stay safe, have fun, and stay magical out there. Hi, neighbor. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of That Witch Podcast. If you want to support the show and get your hands on some really magical goodies, make sure you check out some of the awesome companies that I'm an affiliate for in the show notes below. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes as well as Spotify now. And really the best way to support That Witch Podcast is just by sharing the show online, like your social media platforms, or telling a friend that you think would enjoy it. If you're looking for more magical content like bonus episodes, classes I teach, and support in your witchcraft, make sure you come check us out in That Witch School, my magical monthly membership with a very welcoming private online community. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list for weekly astro forecasts, journal prompts, and more, and stay up to date with all of the happenings here in the neighborhood.